This is Travis Pointer with Crash Addict Industries. We raced the 2013 CanAm Maverick XRS. Basically, we've been having troubles with CVs all year long. Once FCR suspension came on board, got the Maverick handling to where we could drive it to its full potential, we found a weak point in the CVs front and rear. We've broke 6 CVs, 5 rears, 1 front, and actually DNF'd the last race because another front was about to break, and we basically just stopped and pulled it into the trailer. Everyone is blaming the CVs, blaming the axles, but Blake, our engineer here at Crash Addict Industries, and Mike have been tossing around the idea that it's actually the hub and spindle setup, not the CVs. They've been talking about this since probably our second race. We know people that have bought stronger axles, stronger materials, and it's not the fix. And I'm going to show you why they came up with that conclusion. This is the 2013 CanAm Maverick setup. Your wheel bolts here, axle nut goes here, caliper mounts here. Okay, this hub sits on the CV. All of the weight, everything, all the forces, all the stress that goes to this wheel, to this hub, all of that abuse, all that stress is taken right here, this small area of the CV. And we're breaking them off back here where this machined lip is, and also around where this threaded piece, this machine lip is for the threaded piece. This snaps off, wheel comes off. Basically, it ruins the splines on the hub. You can see where we red Loctite ours, so it's not from being loose. We red Loctite the spindles, or red Loctite the splines on the hub, the splines on the axle itself, the threads on where the axle nut goes. I've even Loctited the washer and the nut, and they still come off. Basically, you have just this bearing here holding the axle in, and then all the weight of the hub and wheel and all the forces sit on the CV right here. You start driving it hard. This gets a little bit of play in it. The hub gets a little bit of play in it, and these snap off. The nuts back off. When they break off, it ruins the splines. So you got to buy a new hub. It bends the rotor. You got to buy a new rotor. It bends the caliper, so you got to buy a new caliper. And sometimes it ruins the spindle itself and the bearing. And then obviously the CV's broke, so you got to buy a new axle. It becomes a costly repair, and it's even more costly when you spend all your dedicated hours to get these things ready to race, and it breaks before the third lap. So now that we've taken some time, Mike has been working on this spindle setup. This is the Crash Addict prototype spindle. This first prototype is carbon steel for testing purposes, but it's actually much lighter than what you would think. Basically, what Blake has decided to do is build this spindle that accepts a larger bearing. This is your stock Maverick setup. This will be the Crash Addict setup. Okay, this bearing slides down inside the spindle, presses in just like your stock one, and then once that is in, then have your hub, this is a Maverick hub that we machined to piece and welded onto the hub, but this will slide inside the bearing here. Okay, so now you have your hub, your bearing, and your spindle will all intertwine, and instead of this small piece of the CV taking all of the stress and all of the forces, it will now be transferred into the spindle, the bearing. It'll all be intertwined and locked together, creating a much stronger piece that you should take much more abuse, should be able to drive much harder, not have to worry about braking, worry about brake fade, because when these things, even if you don't brake them, with this setup, it can get loose, it can wiggle, and what happens is the rotor, because it's mounted directly to the hub and it has play, it shoves the pistons in on the caliper, and you have to pump the brakes to use the brakes. So you lose brakes, then you lose wheel, then you DNF a race. Not a fun combination. We'll get this testing in. Once we know that we have everything figured out the way that we want, we plan on selling this setup. We already have a couple factory CanAm drivers that are wanting this, waiting on us to get it done. So we'll keep everybody posted.